Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the GrowWire podcast. I'm your host, Fritz Nelson. I hope all of you have remained safe and healthy during this time. I first want to note that this podcast episode was recorded prior to COVID-19 closures and shelter in place, so our levity should be taken in that context. Everyone at GrowWire extends our support for those impacted by coronavirus, and we encourage you to visit growwire.com for advice, tools, and stories around managing business, building resilience, working from home, and any other resources you may need to get through this challenging time. On this episode, we're joined by Kathryn Rose. She's the founder of WiseHer, a company that provides on-demand expert advice for women to help them accelerate their business or career. She dives into her history within corporate America before being laid off during the market crash in 2007, a moment that actually led her to start her own consulting company and eventually mentoring other female solopreneurs. It's a topic we'll get into as well.
I hadn't really dove into that word before.
Divin?
Was it dived?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's dived.
Okay.
Okay.
Now we know, though, and you guys will find out, too.
That's right. Now, she founded WiseHer after realizing in her consulting practice the challenges women face in growing and scaling their businesses and even just growing within their individual careers. And looking at the wider landscape for women in business, she wanted to build a tool and a network that would help women overcome those challenges. Today, WiseHer works with over 2,000 experts, life coaches, business leaders, and more to provide guidance and advice to women across any area of life or topic. Rosa helps us understand the landscape for women in business today, what businesses can do to better promote equality, and what all of us as individuals can do in our day-to-day lives and business lives.
Yeah.
Tune in for all of that and more.
You're listening to the GrowWire podcast, a place where you will learn the ins and outs of growing a business, running a business, or even taking your big idea, career, or personal development to the next level. It's all possible. Our host, Fritz Nelson, the editor-in-chief of GrowWire.com, will take you on an exploration of growth through candid conversations with some of the most brilliant minds in entrepreneurship, entertainment, business development, and more. Whatever your goal, we know you'll walk away with the right tools to help fuel your journey of growth.
All right, let's kind of start at the top here. What is WiseHer?
WiseHer provides on-demand expert advice for women to help them accelerate their business or career. What we do is we connect women one-on-one with qualified, vetted, been there, done that experts to help them move farther, faster with their business or career.
Let me unpack one or two things on that. When you say on-demand, like what does that mean?
What that means is you can schedule a call with one of our experts to get your specific question answered. So it's on your time when you need it.
So what kind of expertise, like what are the different sort of channels of, I don't know, that's how I think of it. Maybe that's the wrong word.
Right. No, we have a lot of experts in different categories throughout the site. So we have search engine optimization, social media marketing, we have IT and tech. Typically, women need some help with there's really four main buckets. One is finances, HR, you have social marketing and regular sales and marketing, and then funding. So we really provide expertise in those main areas, but also because we have a lot of tech startups, so we have AR and VR and robotics and all those different types of things as well.
Got it. So let's back up even further. Let's talk about your life, your career path, and how we got from all of that to here.
Sure. Well, I don't know, this interview might not be long enough, but so really how WiseHer came about was from my own personal experience. About 10 years ago, I was on Wall Street. I was a successful sales person on Wall Street, and I was about to give birth to my son, my first child, and everything just was going great. And then all of a sudden, it seemed out of nowhere, everything upended. The mortgage market melted down. They shut our division, and at the same time, my mom had a brain aneurysm that left her paraplegic. And so within 3 months, I lost my job. I had a brand new baby, and I had a new normal with my mom not being well, and she was in the hospital for almost a year. So I knew that I couldn't go back and get a full-time job with all those different responsibilities, but I also knew I had to do something. So, being a salesperson to the core, I called all of my old customers and said, what can I do? I could do sales training, marketing, and they all said they wanted their websites to rank in Google. And I thought, well, how hard could that be, right? So I figured out that it was pretty hard, especially since I had no idea I didn't even know it was called search engine optimization. Like that's, how little I knew about anything online marketing. And but I told my top client that I would get back to him in 2 weeks. So I set out to learn as much as I could. And I found out that it was called SEO and did a lot of research around it. But everybody wanted me to take their course or read their book. And I didn't have time for that. I mean, I was driving about an hour and a half one way to see my mom in the hospital and with the baby and everything. So I thought, if I could just talk to somebody and they could walk me through it, I know I could figure this out. And so I did. I found someone, I paid him for his time, and in 2 weeks I got my first paying client. So that's how I ended up, kind of moving in this direction.
Got it. And so you said you're a salesperson to your core, but what you didn't say is that you're an entrepreneur.
Well, at that time I was an accidental entrepreneur.
Okay.
I never set out to start my own business. It was never, it's very in vogue now to be an entrepreneur and a startup founder. Back then, we joke about it that, if you went to start your own business, you were a loser, like you were just unemployable, right? Especially when I graduated college, nobody went and did that. There was no startup, I know I'm totally dating myself, but there was no startup courses or anything like that. So so at that time, I just had kind of tripped and fallen into entrepreneurship and did what a lot of entrepreneurs do. You just kind of keep going and figuring out as you go along.
You mentioned being on Wall Street. I believe you were at Credit Suisse.
I was, yes.
And what were you selling?
Mortgage-backed securities.
Gotcha. Oh, wait, back in the days of right before they...
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah. Good time.
So what did you learn, or what did you take away from that that you've kind of carried with you since?
I think what I took away from that is that, we thought it was too big to fail, right? We knew that there was a market correction coming, but no one predicted that the complete bottom was going to fall out. And I think that part of me, and then of course at the same time with the personal challenges and everything, I sort of took away from that. There really is no. You always have to have a plan B, or you always have to be thinking about nothing is perfectly permanent. There's always something that can happen, and it's just how you react to it, right? So for me, I wanted my son to think that I didn't just give up. I wanted him to see that I was going to figure this out. And, and someday when he ends up in a situation where he has to figure something out, he could say, hey, my mom did it, too. So I think what I really took away from that was the fact that I had this resilience, this deep desire to build something and succeed in spite of the challenges.
So you talked about getting into the world of SEO back in, what was the year?
2008.
2008.
Mm-hmm.
And people weren't really talking about it back then. But people were talking to you about it, right? So you thought, well, I could do this, and it took you a very short time to learn enough to kind of start that. It
was a totally different world at that time. That was before Google made its corrections with its Panda updates and all the things that are really, much more challenging now for SEO. Back then, it was really figuring out the right keywords. I mean, and it is that way still to this day, but it wasn't. I don't think it was as challenging. And it was all about local SEO too. So it was really about finding the right keywords, and you would set up the pages properly and the tags and all those kind of things. And you could do all that today and still not rank. But back then, it was a lot differently. But I took this person every day. I talked to him, and I would get like homework, and I would do it, and I would research, and I didn't really sleep much, and I got my first paying client, and that really was about just trying to kind of prove that I could do it, and just continuing to learn through that process.
And I imagine you were successful then and got other clients. So what kind of things did you hit on and get right?
So I think I just was very conscious about learning the mechanics of it. It was very mechanical at that time. It was, do X, Y, Z and get A, B, C. It really wasn't a lot of nuance to it. And then I added in social media too, as Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn started to take off. I added that in as well. And again, being a salesperson, I was a networker all the time, and I ended up networking with an ad agency on the border of New York and Connecticut, and they handled a lot of the big brands. And at the time, they didn't have a digital marketing team. No one had one, and so they hired me to consult on some very big brands. And so that's how that kind of started me off on that path as well. So for about 5 or 6 years, I did social media and SEO consulting.
So you became a solopreneur. Is that how you
Yes, a
term it?
solopreneur, exactly.
What is that?
Well, if you look at the landscape of women businesses, I mean, there are 13 million of them now, and 90% of them are solopreneurs, and I was in that bucket as well. So really, you're by yourself. You might have a virtual assistant, you might have somebody helping you do things here and there, but typically you're sort of stuck in this solopreneur arena. And that's where I found myself. So, and by the time 2012 came around, I had my daughter, and I realized that I was, like all these other women businesses, alone. And I didn't know how to scale. And even at that time, it wasn't as popular as it is now to be an entrepreneur. So I didn't have anyone to really fall back on and ask, like, how do I scale my business? What do I do? So I decided to go back into corporate and go back into sales. And I did that with a tech company. And I did that for a couple of years. And I learned all about technology platforms and the different nuances and how to work with development teams. And it was a really great experience. And then I built the company up pretty large, and they sold it to another company. And that's when I figured my opportunity was to start something new.
Gotcha. Now, you went from there back to the corporate world, so to speak?
I did, yeah.
And so where was that?
So I went to a company called SharedView, and they did marketing automation platform for the channel, for the IT, particularly the IT channel. So we provided partners with a tool through their vendors with a tool to market and sell their services.
Right. And maybe for readers who don't understand or don't know of this channel thing, what is the channel?
So, Dell, for example, they sell computers directly. They sell them through, and they sell computers directly through their website and things like that. But they sell a lot of their big services. At the time, maybe it was servers or whatever it is they sold. They sell them through technology partners. So you would buy Dell services and bigger products from Dell through these technology partners.
Gotcha. And there are those kind of partners in almost every industry.
In every industry, I would say. I mean, you go to the grocery store and, General Mills doesn't sell directly to you. You have to buy it from Stop and Shop or Price Chopper, right? So anytime you're selling through another entity, it's a channel.
Gotcha. And so then you left. What happened there? You left there, and that's where you went to WiseHer or started WiseHer?
Yeah, so after they sold the company, I really just started looking and thinking about what I wanted to do next, and I fell into the startup world, doing consulting again, a lot on sales, because startups oftentimes have challenges. They're started by an engineer maybe who wanted to start a great thing, or maybe a marketer, but oftentimes they have challenges with sales. So I started in there, and then really thinking about the challenges particularly women face in growing and scaling their businesses, and the same thing with their careers. And I thought, well, let me see if there's something that I feel that I can add value and have impact. And so that's when I started to look at the entire landscape of what's out there for women now and helping them to build and grow, and where I thought I could fit in.
There's enough uncertainty to go around right now. NetSuite reduces it by giving you visibility and control. With so many critical decisions to make, you need the right numbers, and you need them right now. NetSuite by Oracle is the world's #1 cloud business system. With NetSuite, we give you financials, cash flow, payroll, inventory, and more, all in one place, so you have clear visibility and total control of your business. NetSuite customers have the flexibility to work from anywhere, with immediate clarity on critical information right at their fingertips. No more guessing, no more waiting. Make smarter decisions with confidence because you've got crystal clear visibility into your numbers. Join over 20,000 companies who trust NetSuite to stay in control.
Receive your free guide, Managing Business Uncertainty, and schedule your free product tour right now at netsuite.com/USA. Don't wait. Get your free guide, Managing Business Uncertainty, and schedule your free product tour at netsuite.com/USA. netsuite.com/USA.
So you talked a little bit about some of the data around women entrepreneurs or solopreneurs. Why do you think that the majority of them are on their own, solopreneurs, and what are some of the challenges?
So through our research, I have about 150,000 people on my email list, mostly women. I have a very big network because 10 years ago when I had to start off on my own, I didn't know anybody. I mean, there wasn't LinkedIn either. But I knew that I needed to build a network to succeed. So I did. And I went back into my network and I asked those questions. And then, of course, there are lots and lots of studies now. Goldman Sachs does them, Ernst & Young, American Express Open, and they found that there are really 4 main challenges. One is access to qualified advisors. Women just don't necessarily have a deep bench of advisors. The second is education. It's either a real or a perceived lack of education that can hold them back. So, for example, a man would typically, if they have about 40 or 50% of the criteria for a job, would go ahead and apply anyway. Women need almost 90%. So if if it says 10 years and you have 9 years, 11 months, and 29 days, you won't apply. so trying to cover that confidence gap. And the third is what we call cognitive load, or mental load is more of the accepted term today, or the more term that folks are using. And the fact is that the majority of the household and family responsibilities do fall on women, even to this day. And so when you're trying to build and grow, but you have all these other things that you have to account for that aren't part of your day-to-day life, it can be distracting, in some ways. And then the last is funding. Women only get about 2% of the investment capital, but in their defense, women don't necessarily start investable businesses. Usually they are service providers like marketing consultants or coaches or those kinds of things. And it's not something that a VC or angel or even a bank would necessarily invest in. So we set WiseHer up as a social enterprise, and we give a portion of our proceeds back every year in the form of grants for women to help them, get started, scale a little bit, or for corporate education.
So it sounds like you're trying to address a little bit of each of those, maybe a lot of that first one.
Yes.
But then some of the others, the funding part and so on.
So in terms of the education, sometimes it's not a long form course that you need, right? You don't need to take a 6-week course to learn something. Maybe you just need to learn one thing about it that will help you get unstuck. And so in terms of that confidence and education, through the access to these advisors, you're able to have that confidence that, hey, I am on the right track, or now I know what I need to do, because there's so much noise out there. Especially for entrepreneurs, you need to do this and you need to do that. When you're solo, you're like, what do I focus on first? And then in terms of the cognitive and mental load, it's, I'm sitting at my daughter's lacrosse practice and she's there for an hour and a half. And, I could be talking to one of our experts and learning something while I'm sitting in the parking lot, right? So it's really giving them the opportunity to connect on their own time when they need it.
Got it. So what did you do to get WiseHer off the ground?
I taught myself enough code to be dangerous.
Oh, boy.
And we found out that it was kind of dangerous, but I now have a tech team, so that's good news. But it was good enough for an MVP. And I went into my
MVP?
network, a minimum viable product.
Got it.
That's what we call in the startup land, MVP.
Just want to make sure
Just
everybody...
making sure. So I started off with that, and then I went back into my own network, and I am just one of those people who I always lead in service. So I have a great network of people that I have have been supportive of me, and I've been supportive of them all these years, and they know that what I'm trying to build is something that is going to be helpful and have an impact, and they showed up. We have a little over almost 300 experts on currently, and we have a little over 2,000 that are going to be on over the next 6 months. We're just slowly onboarding them. So that's what we did on the expert side. And for the customers, we formed partnerships with a lot of these women organizations. And because they don't have, they might have a community that, kind of gives free resources, which is fantastic and helpful. But sometimes you just need a little bit more something, to get your question answered. And so we partner with them.
Got it. And so that's how you bring the people who use the advisory services into the fold. Do you have any other marketing tactics that you're using?
Yeah, well, I'm a salesperson, so I'm all about the one-to-many, right? So I have several enterprise-level clients. We have 3 universities and a Fortune 100 insurance company who has come on board to offer our services to their employees. So I think that's going to be a great opportunity for us to help all those folks as well.
There are a lot of, not a lot. There are some VC and other funding outfits that are dedicated to helping women specifically. Is that another channel you're looking at? So
yes, we have several VCs that we're talking to support some of the founders that are in their portfolio,
Sure.
And also accelerators. So while accelerators do have oftentimes a mentor network, mentoring is challenging because it really gives you that 50,000-foot view. And what we are all about at WiseHer is the practical tactical. So for example, I was in a mentoring program recently through the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. We were selected to go through there. And one of the mentors I was talking to, we talked about the fact that I really need to kind of get off the road because I was on a plane every week and I really wanted to be in my business, and it's hard to do that, from traveling everywhere. And she suggested about a Facebook Live strategy, or live at the time. LinkedIn didn't have it, but going live and at least staying visible. And I said, well, do you know anything about that? She said, no. So I went to WiseHer and I typed in Facebook Live and I found one of our experts who that's what she does. And so I set a call with her and paid for her time, but no freebies here either. Just talking about the different challenges and answering questions from business owners and entrepreneurs. So it'll be available always on our page, on the WiseHer page on Facebook, and we're going live into several different of the communities that I'm partners with.
So that's how it makes money, is that people pay for the advisory service?
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
And then you said some of the proceeds are used to then help fund some of the people who need funding for their ideas, their businesses?
Yes, because what we found is sometimes you don't need $1 million. Sometimes you need a couple hundred or a couple thousand to get an idea off the ground, or maybe do a test run of something. So that's where we hope to sit in there, is just to be able to, just a little bit of seed money. We hope it's a lot of seed money actually, but what we've found is that it's not, a lot of these VCs and even angel networks now are like their minimum investment they'll look at as $500,000. Well, if you're a life coach that just got certified, you don't need 500. Well, it would be nice if you had it, but they're not going to invest $500,000 in you. So what about a couple thousand to get your entity set up properly, or get a bookkeeper and a CPA to make sure that your business is set up, taking care of the business part.
Got it. And you mentioned you have technology people. You clearly have a platform for your customers and advisors to come together, find one another. That had to take some money. How did you fund the business?
I bootstrapped it myself. I self-funded it. I have 2 co-founders who also came in with a capital contribution, and we have several small investors. Small but mighty. We're a small but mighty team. We do have several investors that came in, but because I had that experience at that, it was the Shared View was really a startup within a big company, and so we were pretty scrappy with how we designed that platform, and I learned a lot from the director of R&D at the time and the rest of the folks there on how to build something that looks expensive, but maybe didn't cost as much. So I learned a lot of those little tricks.
Can you characterize how WiseHer has grown since it started? When you talked about the number of experts,
yeah.
300 now, going to grow to 2,000 here pretty quickly. But what are some of the other metrics?
Well, really, we're looking at how many people come to the site. We're looking at all those different things, and clearly, that's on the rise as the more and more we get out there. I was featured in a lot of the magazines. I speak a lot around the world on women's entrepreneurship issues. And by the way, it's not a conversation that we have without men. We have men experts, and about 30% of our customers are men. Last week, I took a call from a startup founder who wanted to know if he should hire a salesperson and how to go about doing that. So we're not men exclusive. We want to make sure that the conversation includes everyone. We just have a woman focus.
Got it. And so what percentage would you say of the experts are women?
The vast majority of the experts right now are women, although we're trying to change that. We have a number of men reaching out to us and saying, hey, yeah, I get it, right? I want to help. So
yeah. Be careful of them. I'm just kidding. So how would you characterize, I don't know if there's a way to talk about what is the typical kind of engagement, or maybe most typical, is there's a median or an average, what are people asking for most?
Well, right now we have a lot of folks looking for career advice, as you can imagine. It's very tumultuous time out there. A lot of companies are, some of them some startups that we thought were too big to fail are failing. And there's a lot of consolidation going on in the tech world, and there's a lot of folks looking for pipeline, in the tech space. So we have a lot of career advice, and of course with our enterprise client that has come on board to offer our services to their employees. So a lot of career work-life balance, work-life integration, I should say, issues. Folks are looking for those. And then the old tried and trues, sales and marketing and SEO, like those are really, and social media, like those really top off.
Recent statistics suggest that about 40% of U.S. businesses are women-owned businesses. And there's data to suggest that women-founded companies outperform those founded by men. And yet, women receive a very tiny proportion of venture funds for their startups. So from your perspective, and having not only been an entrepreneur, but also now watching them come through your platform, what needs to change? How do we change this?
Well, I think that the systems were set up by men for men. I mean, it just is what it is, right? And so I think that everything now is, if I invest in you today, I want to see 10x or 100x. Someone said to me the other day, I don't touch anything that's not 50x, like 50 times my money that I'm giving you in 5 years. It's like, well, wouldn't anyone love that, right? So I think that it almost some of it has to just get back to like make sense investing. That it's not everybody is going to be a unicorn, right? Some people they have a new zebra community out there now. Everyone's like, I'm a zebra. I don't know what animal it is. I just know that it's important to look at the eventual growth and trajectory of a company and have a mindset that companies can grow and be profitable and return a good return. They don't always have to be the 100x. So I think that's part of it. Also, unfortunately, there's just not a lot of, I guess, wealth or disposables, or investable income that women have accrued over the years. It just hasn't. We're in the midst of I think in the next 5 years, we're going to be in the midst of the biggest wealth transfer that's happened in the last 50 years or something. And so there'll be a lot more women getting into the market. And there's a lot of accelerators and angel investing education platforms that are out there now to educate women on how to be investors and how to grow their wealth through investing in startups.
And we've talked a little bit here about the notion of solopreneurs and how many women are that. And not that that's a bad thing, but with your platform, it sounds like you're trying to create a sort of virtual network so they don't feel like solopreneurs, but
right.
But how do we change that part of it?
Well, I think it is a bad thing, honestly, because what happened with me was, I had started my own business, again, being an accidental entrepreneur. I could have gone back into corporate at any time, but I really wanted to build my business. And then I realized that, I hadn't had a vacation in a long time. And if I left my business, then my business didn't continue. So being a solopreneur, being a solo founder, somebody that has your own company, is not a bad thing. Being a solopreneur where you're the chief cook and bottle washer of everything that you do is, because you'll never scale. You'll just burn yourself out.
Right. What are you hearing or seeing, talk to your clients and just your own observations about if there's any shift in workplace equality? Do you think we're making progress?
Was there a rest of that question, or that's all? Okay.
That's all I have.
So, it's very difficult for me to put any sort of judgment on what is necessarily happening just on an overall 50,000-foot view. I see that there's a lot of conversation going on. I see that there is a lot of effort being put into diversity and inclusion across all gender, race, all different lifestyles, whatever. I see that there's a lot of effort being put into it. I don't know that it necessarily is changing. I hope that it will. I hope that it eventually will. And more women that get, up into the C-suite in those areas are lifting as they climb. So I think that we will see some change. I just don't know if it's going to be fast enough for any of us.
In terms of equal pay, do you think that is changing, or what needs to happen for it to change?
Well, I think that a lot of companies are starting to be more transparent about their pay. And I think that will be helpful. There is still a mom penalty. So if you have a child and you even return to work right after your maternity leave, there is that mom penalty, because they know that you're probably not going to be working 80 hours a week anymore, or answering emails on the weekends because you have soccer practice or whatever. And I think that has to change as well. And I also think women have to take, some measures too, to ask for what they're worth. If they're not going to pay you what you want, then find something else.
Coming back to WiseHer, what areas of expertise, you're going to go from 300 to 2,000, what areas of expertise have you identified, or have your customers identified, that are maybe missing right now that you would need? Just for people listening out there who might have some ideas.
Well, some very specific things. So we are global. So we have experts. We just had our first one sign up from the UAE. So we have experts all over, and I had a woman from Africa reach out that she wanted a specific expert on agribusiness because that's her background. So I went and found somebody and got them on the platform for her. But, there's like just very niche things like CBD and cannabis that we realize that we don't have a ton of those experts. So we're starting to bring that up because there's a lot of buzz around women. I mean, no pun intended. There's a lot of buzz around women and getting involved in the cannabis and the CBD, the industries.
And so now, that you have to reach out and find an expert in agribusiness, an expert in CBD. So how do you go about finding the new ones, the unknown ones?
Well, I have about 12,000 LinkedIn connections, so I usually start there,
right.
And then I'll do Google searches, back to my SEO roots, and I'll see whose names come up over and over again, who are keynoting at these conferences. I'll reach into my network and say, who would you call? So we do have what we call founding advisory board members because right now you can't apply to be an expert. You have to be invited. And that really just is a function of the fact that we want to make sure that, we have the best of the best to offer. And, but I don't know everyone. So I might reach out to one of my founding advisory board members, which I did today about the CBD and cannabis. And she's already given me 3 names of people who are super excited to come on board. So that's how I found them.
The network creates a bigger network.
Definitely.
Gotcha. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I don't know about you, but I am certainly inspired by everything Kathryn Rose and her team are doing at WiseHer. And if you're listening and would like to receive some expert advice, we've included a link to the WiseHer website in the description of this episode. Thank you so much to Kathryn Rose for joining us on the Girl Wire podcast, our editors over at Lampstand, as well as our wonderful producer, Kendall Fisher.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you again soon.
You just listened to the Grow Wire podcast with host Fritz Nelson. Make sure to keep tuning in for more episodes full of tips, tools, stories, and strategies to help take your personal and professional growth to the next level. Until next time.